The war had been going on for far too long. 12 standard years of fighting had left both the Galactic Coalition and the Vex Empire tired and drained. Neither side could gain the upper hand. Ships and soldiers were lost every day, and victory seemed as distant as the farthest stars. Admiral Thorne stared at the holographic map showing the current battle lines. Nothing had changed in the last 6 months. His large, four-fingered hand passed through the projection as he sighed deeply. "We need something new, Commander Orcs. Our academies cannot produce officers fast enough, and those we do have lack something." Commander Orcs, a slender being with pale blue skin, nodded in agreement. "The reports from the outer sectors are not good, sir. We keep losing ground, then gaining it back, then losing it again." Admiral Thorne turned away from the map. "What about that new planet we discovered? The one with the bipedal species?" "Earth?" Orcs blinked his large eyes. "But sir, it's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. The gravity alone would crush most of our species, and the atmosphere, it contains oxygen, a highly corrosive gas. And yet, the humans breathe it," Thorne said. "They live on a planet that would kill most of us in minutes. Think about what that means, Orcs." Orcs looked uncertain. "You're not suggesting we recruit them? They only achieved spaceflight a few centuries ago. They're barely civilized. They fight wars among themselves constantly. They survive in environments from burning deserts to frozen wastelands. They eat food that would poison us." Thorne's voice grew stronger. "We need warriors who think differently, who are built differently." 3 weeks later, the Coalition ship entered Earth's orbit. The delegation, protected by special suits, landed in a place called Geneva. They met with Earth's united government and explained their proposal: allow some of Earth's best military students to join the Coalition Officer Academy. The humans were eager, too eager, some thought. Within days, military academies across Earth had put forward their best candidates. James Wilson stood at attention as the alien visitors walked down the line of cadets. He had trained for 4 years at West Point, expecting to serve his country. Now he might serve his entire planet. "Their bones are so dense," one alien whispered to another. "And look at their muscle structure." Next to James stood Kira Lee, top of her class and undefeated in hand-to-hand combat. Beyond her was Marcus Brown, a tactical genius with a perfect record in battle simulations. Then came Vega Torres, an engineering specialist who could fix anything that moved. At the end of the line stood Darius Smith, a quiet man with skills in 6 languages and a talent for adapting to any situation. The alien called Orcs stopped in front of them. "Your planet has high gravity, extreme weather, and dangerous predators. Yet your people thrive. The Coalition needs that strength." The 5 cadets exchanged glances. None of them had thought Earth was special. It was just home. "You will find space travel simple," Orcs continued. "Our ships will feel light to you. Our standard gravity will make you faster and stronger than you are here. But the war is brutal, and many do not return." James stepped forward. "Sir, we understand the risks. Earth has seen enough wars to know their cost." Kira nodded. "We're ready, sir." 2 days later, the 5 cadets and 20 others from around Earth boarded the Coalition ship. As they broke orbit, they watched their blue planet shrink below them. None knew if they would ever see it again. On the bridge, Orcs turned to the ship's captain. "Do you think they can make a difference? 25 humans against an empire." The captain watched the strange creatures from the Deathworld as they marveled at the stars. "I don't know, but the Vex won't be expecting them. And sometimes surprise is the best weapon of all." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying Earth's first warriors to the stars. The Coalition Officer Academy on Alturas Prime was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Massive crystal towers reached into the purple sky. Strange, floating creatures drifted between buildings. The air was thin but breathable, making the humans feel like they were on a high mountain. "This will be your home for the next 6 months," said Instructor Vrel, a tall, insect-like being with 4 arms and compound eyes. "If you survive." The human cadets were split up and assigned to different training groups. Each group had cadets from 15 different planets, all looking at the humans with a mix of fear and curiosity. James entered his barracks to find his bunk was much too large and the ceiling uncomfortably high. A blue-skinned cadet with 6 fingers on each hand approached him. "You are from the Deathworld. You look so fragile." The alien's translator made his voice sound metallic. "My name is James," he replied, offering his hand. The alien stared at it. "I am Trill. We do not touch in greeting. Your custom is strange." Across the academy, the other humans were having similar experiences. Kira found that her roommates kept their distance, afraid her toxic skin might harm them. Marcus discovered his tactical training group believed humans were too primitive to understand advanced warfare. Vega's engineering instructor couldn't believe she could lift the tools without mechanical assistance. And Darius found himself alone at meals, no one willing to sit near the Deathworlder. The first day of physical training changed everything. Instructor Vrel led the cadets to a massive obstacle course. This course is designed to test your limits. No cadet has ever completed it on their first attempt. The non-human cadets went first. They struggled with climbing walls, crawling under barriers, and swimming through thick liquid. Most gave up halfway. Then it was James' turn. He took a deep breath and began. The lower gravity of Altaris Prime made him feel light as air. He jumped over walls that others had climbed. He ran through mud that had slowed others to a crawl. He finished the course in 1/3 the time of the fastest alien cadet. The other humans did the same. Kira broke all records for the combat simulator. Marcus solved tactical problems in minutes that usually took hours. Vega lifted equipment that normally required 3 cadets to move. Darius adapted so quickly to alien languages that he was soon helping translate for instructors. Academy Commander Gray, a veteran of 30 years of war, called an emergency meeting of the training staff. "What are we seeing here?" he asked, looking at the human performance data. "They're not normal," said Instructor Vrel. "Their planet has made them different. They're stronger, faster, and more durable than we expected. Their endurance is most remarkable," added another instructor. "The Carillion cadets must rest after 4 hours. The Volran need breaks every 6 hours. The humans just keep going." Commander Gray watched footage of the humans training. "We've been fighting this war too long with the same tactics, the same thinking. Perhaps what we need is something different." As weeks passed, the other cadets' attitudes toward the humans changed. Fear became respect. Distance became partnership. When training exercises formed mixed species teams, everyone wanted humans on their side. One night, the 5 original human cadets met secretly in the academy garden. "They're starting to see what we can do," James said. Kira nodded. "But they still don't fully understand Earth. They think we're just strong because of gravity." Marcus looked up at the strange stars. "They don't know our history, how many wars we've fought among ourselves, how we've survived plagues, disasters, and our own worst mistakes." "They will," Vega said quietly. "Soon enough." Darius, who rarely spoke, finally added, "They called Earth a death world, but it made us who we are." None of them knew that far away, the Vex Empire was planning an attack that would test them all sooner than expected. Graduation day at the Coalition Academy should have been a time of celebration. The human cadets had completed their training at the top of their classes. The ceremony hall was filled with officers and officials from across Coalition space. Commander Gray stood at the podium, about to call the first graduate's name, when his communication device beeped loudly. His face changed as he read the message. "The ceremony is canceled," he announced. "All new officers report for immediate deployment. The Vex have attacked Outpost Severin. This is not a drill." Chaos erupted as cadets rushed to their stations. The human officers were pulled aside by Admiral Thorne himself. "You 5, he said to James, Kira, Marcus, Vega, and Darius. You've shown exceptional abilities. We're sending you to different fronts where we're losing ground. This is earlier than planned, but we have no choice. Within hours, they were on separate ships headed to different battle zones. None had time to say goodbye to each other. James found himself on the forest moon of Teleris, where coalition forces had been pushed back for weeks. The local commander looked at him with doubt. They sent me one human. What am I supposed to do with you? Let me see your tactical maps, sir, James replied. The maps showed a standard coalition defense, organized lines, heavy weapons at choke points, troops dug in at forward positions, all textbook strategy, all failing. Your defenses are too predictable, James said. On Earth, we learned to fight differently. The commander scoffed but was desperate enough to listen. James reorganized their forces into small, mobile units hidden throughout the forest. When the Vex attacked again, expecting the usual defense, they found nothing. Then the coalition forces struck from all directions at once, using the dense forest as cover. The Vex retreated for the first time in months. On the desert planet Crux, Kira's transport was shot down miles from the coalition base. The pilot died in the crash. Alone, with limited water and no communications, Kira began the long trek across the burning sands. 3 days later, she walked into the coalition base, carrying the critical data storage from the ship and a collection of Vex weapons she had taken from a patrol she encountered. "How did you survive?" asked the shocked base commander. "No species can last more than a day in that desert without special equipment." Kira simply handed over the data. "I grew up in Arizona. This was just like home, but with 2 sons." Marcus was assigned to the coalition flagship, where General Voss was planning a major offensive. When Marcus suggested changes to the attack plan, the general dismissed him. "You've never even seen a real space battle, boy." "No, sir, but I've studied every major battle in human history. The Vex use patterns similar to what we call phalanx formations. Alexander the Great defeated those over 2,000 years ago on Earth." The general reluctantly incorporated some of Marcus's suggestions. When the battle came, the Vex were unprepared for the new tactics. The coalition won its first major victory in a year. Vega found herself at a forward repair station where damaged ships limped in from the front lines. The repair times were too slow. Ships were waiting weeks for parts that had to be shipped from central factories. "We can make most of these parts here," she told the station chief. "Impossible. We don't have the right equipment." Vega looked around at the junk pile of damaged components. "On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention." Within days, she had created a makeshift production line, modifying existing tools to make critical parts. Repair times dropped from weeks to days. Darius was sent to a listening post intercepting Vex communications. The analysts there had been trying to fully crack the Vex language for years. After just 2 weeks of studying the patterns, Darius made a breakthrough. "They don't communicate like we do," he explained. "Their language is partly chemical, transmitted through their technology. That's why our translators weren't working." His insight allowed the coalition to decode Vex battle plans for the first time. Reports of these successes began filtering back to coalition high command. Admiral Thorne collected them all, a small smile growing on his face as he read each one. "The Deathworlders," he said to himself. "They're changing everything." 3 months had passed since the human officers had been deployed to the front lines. The war room of coalition headquarters buzzed with activity as Admiral Thorne reviewed the latest reports. The large holographic map of coalition and Vex territories showed something that hadn't been seen in years. The battle lines were moving in the coalition's favor. "Promote them all," Thorne ordered, looking at the files of the 5 humans. "And get me more from Earth. As many as will come." James now commanded his own battalion on Teleris. His guerrilla tactics had pushed the Vex back across 3 valleys. The soldiers under him, a mix of 6 different species, had learned to fight in the Earth way, adapting quickly, using the terrain, and never doing what the enemy expected. "The Vex are retreating from the northern region," reported his second-in-command, a tall bird-like being named Call. "They don't understand how we're moving through the dense forest so easily." James smiled. "On Earth, humans fought in jungles for centuries. We learned to become part of the environment, not fight against it." At Coalition Central Command, Marcus had been given a special role, developing new combat doctrines based on Earth military history. He taught alien officers about Hannibal crossing the Alps, the guerrilla tactics of the American Revolution, and the desert warfare of North Africa. Most species develop one way of fighting that works for their homeworld, he explained to a room full of senior officers. Humans had to develop many ways because Earth has so many different environments. The Coalition began forming special mixed species units that trained in these new Earth doctrines. Their success rate against Vex forces jumped dramatically. Vega had been promoted to chief engineer of the 7th Fleet. Her modifications to Coalition weapons and ships gave them new advantages. She designed rifle grips that worked for both human hands and alien appendages. She adjusted shield generators to use less power while providing better protection. "How do you think of these solutions?" asked her alien assistant after Vega fixed an engine problem that had stumped their best minds. "Earth technology always had to work with limited resources," she explained. "We learned to fix things with whatever we had available." Kira now led an elite strike force that specialized in missions behind enemy lines. Her team could survive in environments that would kill most Coalition species. On the toxic moon of Grelth, her team was trapped when their ship was destroyed. The atmosphere was filled with gases that would kill most beings in minutes. With their protective suits damaged, they should have died. Instead, Kira led them through the poisonous fog to an abandoned Vex outpost 50 miles away. When they finally reached a Coalition rescue ship, the medics were shocked. "Your blood shows traces of 3 deadly toxins," the doctor told Kira. "How are you still standing?" She shrugged. "Humans adapt. Our bodies have fought off diseases and poisons for thousands of years." Darius had become the Coalition's expert on Vex communication and culture. His ability to learn alien languages had led to a breakthrough. The Coalition could now intercept and understand Vex battle orders in real time. "They're starting to develop specific strategies against humans," Darius reported to Admiral Thorne. "They call us the soft skins, but they fear us. They don't understand why their usual tactics don't work on us." News of the humans' successes spread across Coalition space. Earth was fast-tracked for full membership in the Galactic Coalition. More human volunteers flooded the Academy, eager to join the fight. In response, the Vex Empire shifted its strategy. Their supreme commander issued new orders. The humans must be eliminated first in any engagement. They were too dangerous to be allowed to spread their influence. On a secure channel, the 5 original human officers managed a rare group call. "The Vex are targeting us specifically now," James said. "They're developing new weapons just for humans." Marcus nodded. "It means we're hurting them. They see us as the biggest threat." "Let them come," Kira said with a grim smile. "Earth has faced extinction-level events before. We're still here." "We need to prepare," Vega warned. "The next phase will be harder." Darius, normally quiet, spoke up. "They don't understand what they're dealing with. They think we're dangerous because we're strong or fast. But that's not it." "What is it then?" asked James. "We refuse to lose," Darius replied. "No matter what." The war room of the Coalition flagship Steadfast fell silent as Admiral Thorne activated the holographic display. For the first time in 12 years, the glowing map showed a bold plan of attack rather than desperate defense. "Operation Earthfall begins in 6 hours," Thorne announced to the assembled commanders. "For the first time, we take the fight to Vex territory." The plan had been developed by Marcus and a team of human tactical officers. It was unlike anything the Coalition had attempted before, a multi-pronged assault targeting 3 Vex star systems simultaneously. James, now a colonel, would lead the ground forces on Vex-occupied Trell Prime. Kira's special forces would sabotage the Vex command centers ahead of the main assault. Vega had upgraded the Coalition fleet with new shield configurations specifically designed to counter Vex weapons. Darius had provided intelligence on Vex defensive positions that would be crucial for the attack. As the commanders dispersed to their ships, Thorn pulled Marcus aside. "The Vex will not expect this," Thorn said. "They believe we lack the courage for a direct assault." Marcus nodded. "That's why it will work, Admiral. The Vex think in patterns. Humans specialize in breaking them." The attack began with Kira's team infiltrating the Vex communication hub on Trell Prime. Moving through tunnels that the massive Vex soldiers couldn't enter, they planted explosives at key points throughout the facility. "Remember," Kira told her team, "timing is everything. The main force needs exactly 30 minutes of confusion." When the explosives detonated, the Vex communication grid went dark. Their coordinated defense fell apart as individual units lost contact with Central Command. James' ground forces landed during the chaos. His troops moved quickly, using terrain in ways the Vex never expected. The aliens had built their defenses to stop frontal assaults from larger forces. They weren't prepared for small, fast-moving teams attacking from multiple directions. "Push forward," James ordered as his forces secured the main Vex landing field. "They're still trying to regroup." In orbit, Coalition ships engaged the Vex fleet. Upgraded with Vega's modifications, their shields held against Vex energy weapons that would have crippled them months before. All ships maintained Formation Delta. Vega commanded from the engineering deck of the Coalition destroyer Triumph. "Their weapons are calibrated for our old shield frequencies." The battle raged for 14 hours. Then, just as victory seemed within reach, the Vex deployed their secret weapon. Canisters launched from their remaining ships, spreading a green mist over Coalition positions. Warning alarms blared across all frequencies. "Biological agent detected," reported a sensor officer. "It's targeting specific DNA patterns. It's designed to kill humans." The mist seeped through environmental suits and caused any human it touched to collapse in agony. Within minutes, human officers across the battlefield were incapacitated. The Coalition advance faltered as non-human commanders tried to adapt to losing their human leaders. In the medical bay of the Steadfast, doctors worked desperately to save the affected humans. Admiral Thorn watched as James, Marcus, and dozens of other human officers fought for their lives, their skin covered in green blisters. The Vex engineered this specifically for human physiology, the chief medical officer explained. "It attacks their respiratory system. We've never seen anything like it." All seemed lost. Then, something unexpected happened. After 6 hours, James sat up in his medical bed, coughing but alive. "What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The doctor stared in disbelief. "Your immune system. It's adapting to the toxin. It's impossible." One by one, the other humans began to recover. Where other species might have died, the humans' bodies fought back against the biological weapon. "Earth diseases," Marcus explained weakly. "We've been fighting them for thousands of years. Our bodies learned quickly." Within 12 hours, most of the human officers were back on duty. The Vex, who had thought they'd eliminated the human threat, were unprepared when the attack resumed with even greater fury. "They don't understand what they're dealing with," Kira told her team as they prepared to re-enter the fight. "Every time they try to kill us, we come back stronger." By the end of the third day, the Coalition forces had secured all 3 targeted systems, the first major victory in the long war. As news spread throughout Coalition space, a new feeling emerged: hope. In his private quarters, Admiral Thorn recorded a message to Earth: "Send us more Deathworlders." The tide has turned. 6 months after Operation Earthfall, the war had changed completely. Coalition forces pushed deeper into Vex territory each week. The strategy developed by Marcus, now known as the Earth Doctrine, had been adopted across the entire Coalition military. In the Grand Command Chamber of the Coalition headquarters, Thousands of officers from 100 worlds watched as General James addressed them. Behind him, the largest tactical display in Coalition space showed the current battle lines, now deep in Vex territory. "The Vex are falling back to their core worlds," James said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "For the first time, we can see the end of this war." The chamber erupted in cheers, but James raised his hand for silence. "This will be the hardest part. The Vex will fight most desperately when protecting their homeworlds. They have weapons they've held in reserve. They will use them all now." He wasn't wrong. The Vex Supreme Command had declared a state of total war. They stripped defenses from their outer colonies to strengthen their core systems. They activated ancient weapons that had been banned for generations. They drafted civilians into military service. Kira's intelligence teams intercepted a transmission from the Vex leadership to their people. The soft skins from the poison world must be destroyed at any cost. They have infected the Coalition with their aggressive tactics. If they are not stopped, our way of life will end forever. The Coalition fleet approached the Nexus system, the heart of Vex power. 3,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled, prepared for the final push. Humans commanded many of these vessels, with mixed crews of dozens of species working together. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship Guardian, finalizing battle plans with Admiral Thorne. "The Vex have concentrated their forces at these 3 points," Marcus explained, highlighting positions on the tactical map. "They expect us to choose one for our main thrust. And we won't," Thorne concluded. "We'll strike all 3 simultaneously." Marcus nodded. "Earth military history teaches us, when the enemy is expecting you to be predictable, be unpredictable instead." Vega had been working nonstop in the engineering bay, modifying the fleet's weapons for the final battle. Her team had developed a new type of shield that could withstand even the Vex's most powerful energy weapons. "The key is rotating frequencies," she explained to her engineering teams. "No fixed defense can resist all attacks. Adaptation is survival." Darius led the communication corps, coordinating the thousands of ships that would need to act in perfect harmony. He had developed a new translation system that allowed all species in the Coalition fleet to communicate instantly, without the delays of standard translators. "The Vex rely on perfect coordination within their own forces," he told his officers. "We must be even more coordinated, but also more flexible." The battle for the Nexus system began at dawn, Standard Time. The Vex had assembled their entire remaining fleet, nearly 5,000 ships of all sizes. They had mined the approach vectors, positioned defensive platforms throughout the system, and prepared massive energy cannons on their moons. It should have been impossible for any attacking force to break through. But the Coalition forces didn't attack as expected. Instead of a frontal assault, they split into 5 separate battle groups, each approaching from a different angle. When the Vex moved to intercept one group, the others would advance. When the Vex adjusted, the groups would change formation again. It was warfare as flowing water, another concept from Earth that the humans had taught their alien allies. On the bridge of his command ship, James watched the battle unfold. "They're starting to break," he said as Vex ships began to fall out of formation. "Their command structure is too rigid. They can't adapt quickly enough." Kira's special forces struck at the main Vex command station, hidden in an asteroid field. Using modified stealth technology, they slipped past the defenses and planted charges at key points. When the station went dark, the Vex fleet fell into disarray. Across the command net, Marcus gave the final order: "All ships, execute attack pattern Thermopylae." The Coalition fleet converged from all directions, trapping the scattered Vex forces between them. Without central coordination, the Vex ships fought individually, and were defeated individually. After 18 hours of battle, the remaining Vex commanders sent a message. They wished to discuss terms of surrender. In the quiet aftermath, the 5 human officers who had started it all gathered on the observation deck of the Guardian. Through the massive viewports, they could see the shattered remains of the once mighty Vex fleet. "It's really over," Vega said quietly. James shook his head. "The fighting is over. Building peace will be harder." Darius looked out at the stars. "They never understood us. They thought we were dangerous because we came from a deadly world. But that's not why we won." "Why did we win?" Kira asked. Marcus answered, "Because Earth taught us something the Vex never learned: how to change." 1 year after the Battle of Nexus, the Grand Hall of Unity on the Coalition capital world of Alteris Prime was filled to capacity. Representatives from 200 worlds gathered to witness history. At the center of the hall stood a simple wooden table, specially brought from Earth for this occasion. Admiral Thorne, now Supreme Commander of Coalition forces, stood on one side. Across from him, the 3 remaining leaders of the Vex Empire waited, their once proud postures now humble. "Today we end 12 years of war," Thorne announced, his voice carrying through the hall and broadcasting across thousands of worlds. "Today we begin a new chapter for our galaxy." The peace treaty was simple but comprehensive. The Vex would surrender their military technology and disband their conquest fleets. In exchange, they would keep their homeworlds and join the Coalition as equal members. No reparations, no punishments, another idea that had come from the humans. History teaches us that harsh peace terms only lead to future wars. Marcus had advised during the treaty negotiations. Earth learned this lesson the hard way. As the treaty was signed, James watched from the honored guests section. Now a general, he commanded respect from species that had once looked down on humans as primitive. Next to him sat Kira, her special forces insignia gleaming on her uniform. She had trained a new generation of multi-species teams that would help maintain peace along the former borders. Vega stood nearby, deep in conversation with Vex engineers. Already they were discussing how to convert warships into vessels for exploration and trade. The technology that had been used to destroy could now be used to build. Darius moved quietly among the delegates, his gift for languages making him the perfect diplomat. He had been instrumental in helping the Vex and Coalition representatives understand each other's cultures during the peace talks. When the ceremony ended, Admiral Thorne approached the 5 humans who had changed the course of the war. "Earth is being granted founding member status in the new expanded Coalition," he told them. "Your world will have equal standing with those who have been part of galactic society for thousands of years." "What happens now?" James asked. Thorne smiled, something he had rarely done during the war years. "Now we rebuild. And we learn from each other." 6 months later, the 5 officers stood on a hill overlooking a vast plain in Kenya on Earth. Below them, construction drones and workers from a dozen worlds were building the new Galactic Academy. "I never thought I'd see the day when aliens would come to Earth to learn from us," Vega said, watching the activity below. Marcus nodded. "They want to understand what makes humans different, why we think the way we do." "It's our world that made us," Kira replied. "Earth taught us to adapt or die." A shuttle landed nearby, and Admiral Thorne emerged, accompanied by young cadets from 15 different species. They looked nervously at the blue sky, the green grass, the distant mountains, all strange and potentially threatening to beings from gentler worlds. "These are the first students of the new academy," Thorne explained. "They volunteered to train here, on Earth. They want to learn what the Deathworlders know." The cadets approached the human officers with a mixture of awe and fear. One of them, a slender being with blue-tinted skin, stepped forward. "Is it true that you grew up on this world?" The cadet asked James, "with such high gravity and dangerous predators." James smiled. "This is our home. It may seem harsh to you, but it's where we belong." As the sun set over the new academy, Darius finally spoke. "We thought we were alone in the universe. Then we found out we were feared because our world is considered deadly. But in the end, that was our strength." The galaxy had changed forever. Species that had once looked down on Earth now sent their best and brightest to learn there. The war had ended not just with peace, but with understanding. In the coming years, Thousands of cadets from hundreds of worlds would train on Earth. They would struggle with the gravity, marvel at the diverse ecosystems, and learn from the history of a species that had survived on a world that should have killed them. And when they returned to their home planets, they would carry with them the most important lesson Earth had to teach. No matter how difficult the challenge, adaptation is always possible. Change is not something to fear, but to embrace. The former cadets from the Deathworld had not just won a war. They had changed the course of galactic history. Admiral Thorne watched as the new class of mixed-species cadets began their first training exercise under James's direction. They moved awkwardly in Earth's gravity, but they were trying. They were learning. They thought the war would drag on, Thorne said quietly to himself. Then the Deathworld cadets arrived.